All right. What is up, guys? I am super sorry for how late I am. I am I went down to restart and then all of a sudden my computer had like 900 updates 5 minutes before I was supposed to go live, and here I am. So let me know if you can hear and see me okay. Sorry again for the getting here late, but better late than ever. Than never, I should say. It is 25 minutes late, and that took way longer than I wanted it to. And so I'm already on my second beer already because, why not, right? But so anyway, I'm glad people were getting into the chat a little bit and staying with me. I apologize for taking so long, man. It's one of those days, right? So my webcam wasn't working, so I decided to restart, and all of a sudden my whole entire computer needed like 900 updates, and it's like one of those things that when you want it to go really, really fast, it did not go fast at all, and so it was sitting there just ticking and ticking and ticking. So appreciate you guys sticking with me, but here we are. So cheers, cheers. What's everybody drinking tonight? I have, again, on my second round here, I have a Pilsner. Still finishing this one up. If you haven't watched that video, it's an awesome one. And go check that video out. This is always a perfect beer to have on tap, just at home, and, an easy drinking beer that everyone's going to like when they come over. So, what's everybody been doing the last couple of weeks? We got some cool updates going on for the YouTube studio we're going to talk about. I got it's the competition we were in last week, or I was in for the beer and branding. We can talk about that one again too. But if you haven't watched the video for that, I just put a video out last week going over that competition. But we'll talk a little bit about that tonight. So I see there were some questions in the chat a little bit about the about having a chest freezer and which size you should use if you wanted to convert it to a kegerator, or whether you should go with um, an upright fridge. And I use an upright fridge for my kegerator. I love that, by the way. And the only reason I prefer that is because you also get the freezer space, and I can still fit 6 kegs in there. And square footage on the floor wise, anyway, it's less space. But a freezer works really, really well for that. If you use an Inkbird to kind of regulate the temperature a little bit, so it stays within those refrigerator temperatures rather than the freezer temperatures. I did that for a really long time, and I kind of used my chest freezer as my fermentation chamber, but now I kind of do both, right? I would suggest going with at least about a 10 cubic foot chest freezer if you're going to do, 4 or more kegs. That should give you plenty for 4 kegs and then some extra room for some other stuff. You can even probably put your CO2 tank and regulator and stuff inside the inside the kegerator if you wanted to, or a keezer if you want to call it that. And that in that way you could keep everything inside and it looks nice and tidy. If you use an upright freezer like I do in my kind of background of all my videos, that's just an old regular refrigerator with all the coils kind of in the back, so you're able to kind of drill through the side. And I have a video on how to do that. You have to kind of take out some of the shelving and stuff, but to me, I really like it because it still functions like a refrigerator. I don't need another temperature controller to regulate the refrigerator, and then I have freezer space for food and hops. I primarily hops in mine, but it's up to you how you want to do it. But I got that fridge that you see in my videos, I got that for like $30 on Craigslist, or look on Facebook Marketplace or something like that. So that's pretty awesome. Trying to get through a Kvike ginger beer stein. So speaking of stein, I should have brought my stein from Oktoberfest and drank out of that today. Man, I got to do that on my next live for sure. That's I haven't used it yet. It's more of a prop than anything, but why not use it, right? So we'll bust that guy out next time for sure. But if you haven't looked at the last video that I dropped, I was in a competition and I talked about this a little bit. Um, um, Over the past couple of months, definitely the past couple of lives. I do an event every year at Noda Brewing, which is funny. I'm actually just wearing their shirt today. Noda Brewing in Charlotte. It just looks like this. They are the third largest brewery in Charlotte, behind Old Mecklenburg Brewing and maybe one other. Maybe they're the second largest. They do about 20,000 barrels a year, which is a lot. They're a pretty big They're a pretty big brewery, and they do an event every year that is called Beer and Branding. And so their beer and branding event, they pick a secret ingredient. They have like a showcase day in June-ish or so, or July, and then they give you a secret ingredient and they pair you up with a branding professional, and those people then get it. We get to get it. Ugh, if I could talk tonight, get together as a team. And then you start talking about a beer that you want to brew as a brewer, and then the branding people start coming up with ideas for the labels and the design and what the that stuff's going to look like, and so that's really cool. So 2 years ago, I did a maple pecan brown ale with a buddy of mine named Adam, and we ended up getting People's Choice. So we got a trophy like this. We won People's Choice. That means all the people that came in judged and voted on that, and we got People's Choice, and that's really awesome. But we didn't win Brewer's Choice, which is what Noda Brewing picks for that maple pecan brown ale. Well, this year, I did a cold IPA. We had to use Chinook hops, and I brewed that for that video that came out on Monday, and I actually won that, and so that's got best beer for beer and branding. So I actually get to brew that cold IPA recipe at Noda, which is again a huge brewery, but we're going to do it on their research and development system, R&D system, so their smaller one. But that'll be on tap in their brewery sometime this spring. So I'm really, really excited about it, dude. It was so fun. Probably one of the cooler competitions I do every year. There's probably several dozen, 40 maybe ish beers and different brewers that were there. So it was really stoked to get first, and I think I had an awesome recipe. So if you want to check that out, it's a cold IPA, and we can talk a little bit about what a cold IPA is too in here in a minute. But if you haven't done one of those, it's a little bit different than a regular West Coast IPA that you're going to traditionally see in the store. So, and it's definitely not a hazy. It's more of like a Pilsner color, lighter color beer, but with those hoppy characteristics. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But thanks, Enclave. Appreciate it. Yeah, dude, the win was so cool. I really I knew I had a pretty good beer, but there were a lot of good ones that I was able to taste that night. So I didn't really know how the judges would react, and ended up taking home first place. So that's awesome. You also got first place on a spiced blonde stout. Nice. Now it's got a first and a third place. Super stoked. Yeah, that's a good thing about entering competitions with a good beer. So you can enter several of them, and if your beer does well, you can win, all different kinds of things for one beer that you brewed that's really, really good. And so I always like to enter several different ones on there, but some of them, end up with no medals whatsoever. Some of them end up with several medals. And then even the same beer in one competition could be gold, and another one they could not place at all. And it really depends on the people drinking your beer, the people judging your beer, and then also, what other beers it's going up against. And it is weird because the same beer you would think would get the same or a similar score from each competition, but they really don't. I mean, if you enter them into a BJCP judged competition, those judges that are tasting your beer may have a different palate, or they just have different preferences, and so it's really kind of subjective. But it is good to hear about the feedback that you get written down on some of the feedback forms when they do judge your beer. So, if you don't get first, second, third places or best of shows or anything like that, don't worry about it. Just keep submitting beers, and eventually you'll get some really good feedback. You'll be able to change your brewing process around a little bit and make yourself a better brewer in the first place. Yeah. So, Enclave, good question. I'll get into that. So the what makes a cold IPA different than a hopped lager? And so two things. So a lot of people confuse a West or a cold IPA with a IPL, which is a India Pale Lager, or a same recipe that you would do for a West Coast IPA, and then they brew it with lager yeast. There's a style kind of coming out which is very similar, called a West Coast Lager or something like that, or a dry hop pilsner or a dry hop lager or something like that, right? So they're all kind of similar, but the main difference is that with a cold IPA, you have an amount of flaked rice in your beer. It's a lighter 2 row usually, and some flaked rice, so lighter colored beer like a pilsner or some other small lighter lager. You do use lager yeast, but the main difference is that you brew and or you ferment at ale temperatures with that yeast. And so I used soft lager from Fermentis, which is 34-70. And that yeast actually is really good at lower to mid 60 temperatures. And so you still get a little bit of those lager-esque flavors, but it brews up very clean and nice even at the lower 60s. And so I did my lagering at, normally you would do that at about 55 degrees Fahrenheit. Not sure what that is in Celsius, but you can do the conversion yourself. But then I did this one at 64 degrees Fahrenheit. And so this one was warmer. And that's what kind of makes it the cold IPA. So other than just doing a like a pilsner and dry hopping it or adding more hops to make it bitter, so some people call it a West Coast pilsner or something like that. Kind of a similar beer, right? And so they're really light colored, really low malt grain bill, that kind of thing. Lighter color, clean, crisp, but it also has that kind of West Coast IPA bite, bitterness, and citrusy notes most of all. And so, what I did for this cold IPA, and you can watch the video, see how I did it. I actually did 10 ounces of hops altogether. I did some at 60 minutes for bittering, of course, because you need the bitterness. I did, and then the rest of them were kind of late boil. I did some at Whirlpool additions, and then I did 2 rounds of dry hopping, both at high Krausen during fermentation and then post fermentation when it was completely done. And the trick to that is the yeast will create, both with hops that you add late in the boil and in Whirlpool and those high Krausen hops, it will do some biotransformation of those hop oils and make them into those kind of citrusy, melony, almost honey-like flavors to make them like really light and clean and juicy flavor, right? So that's kind of the trick for the hazy IPA. But it won't make them hazy just by adding hops at high Krausen, but it will make them bring out those good citrusy characteristics. The post fermentation dry hops will give it those same kind of hoppy aromas that you're used to from normal dry hopping. So when you do like a West Coast IPA and you dry hop post fermentation, you'll get some of those kind of piney, floral, citrusy notes still, but it's different. It's a different flavor because you're not biotransforming those oils that are in there. And so in the cold IPAs, we generally will throw I'll generally put hops in at high Krausen, and the 3470 yeast does a pretty good job with that. So they're very similar, I would say, as far as what the difference between that cold IPA or a West Coast lager or like a dry hopped lager, that kind of thing. And so they're very, very similar, but the cold IPA was kind of invented, if you will, from Wayfinder Brewing in Portland, Oregon. They coined the term cold IPA. And so in this particular case, we had to use Chinook hops for this beer that I ended up winning. And in this particular case, that was awesome because I was able to kind of bring out some of those notes, even though I only used one hop variety. So in cold IPA or recipes I've done before, I pulled out 4 or 5 different varieties of hops, maybe not 5, but 3 or 4 anyway. And then, use those at different times during the boil or that kind of thing. For Chinook hops, it kind of shows the versatility, that you can add them as a bittering hop, and then also, every other stage during both the boil process and fermentation process in order to get some of those different flavors. So it was kind of a cool experiment to do with just Chinook hops. So it's almost like a smash beer, if you will. But in this particular case, I wanted to really showcase the Chinook hops, and I think that's why it got chosen as a winner, because it was good, and it was, we used that ingredient as they wanted us to for the competition. So very, very cool. So check out that video if you haven't already. It's already on my page. It's been up for since Monday. Go check that video out and watch that process. We also have in that video the branding people that talk about the process of how they come up with the design, and we showed the design in the video for their we called the beer Hopsicle IPA, and so you can go see that and check that out. And Tara and Josh came over and kind of showcase how they come up with the design, how they work with people. They have a branding page, a marketing page that they do themselves. So we talk a little bit about that process and what they came up with, and then we show those different designs that everybody came up with for the competition in there too. So it was really cool, very neat to see everybody. Again, one of my favorite things that we do every year as far as a home brewer is concerned is it makes you think outside the box when they draw the secret ingredient every year. And in this particular case, it was Chinook hops, but in other years we've done, sea salt, or I shouldn't say sea salt, just salt in general. I've done maple syrup. They did cocoa nibs one year, peaches one year, that kind of thing. So it's really kind of cool to once they showcase it, to kind of start thinking of, okay, what kind of beer can I brew when I put this type of ingredient in it? And maybe you haven't used that ingredient before. So for like salt, for instance, I did a beer called Chips and Salsa, and that one had poblano peppers and a lot of flaked maize in it. So it was like eating the chips with the flaked maize and the corn. And then you had the saltiness from some sea salt at the end of the boil. And then I put some poblano peppers without the seeds in them, and I made a little tincture of that. And that really helped with the chili flavor without the heat. So you almost get that chips and salsa flavor, like you're eating chips and salsa, drinking the beer. And it was super light. It was like light colored like this one. So that was really, really cool. Probably one of the more inventive beers I've ever made, just kind of trying to think outside the box for that one. But that was a great beer. I actually brewed that a couple different versions of that one after that competition because I liked it so much. Morning. The morning I woke up dead. Just the right stuff to listen to. I was going to go to the bathroom and make my Xmas beer. What kind of Xmas beer are you making? Christmas beers. Speaking of anyone doing any type of fall or Christmas beers, I was going to ask that tonight too. I know a lot of people are doing pumpkin spice stuff. Some people were talking on the last stream about doing, some different brown ales or other celebration type ales. Let me know in the comments what you guys are brewing up for the holidays. So I've got a lot of stuff going on the page right now. I have I have a Schwartz beer that I just brewed with a buddy of mine. That one is almost done with fermentation, and then that should be, we did that last weekend. That one should be lagering after that, and that's got to be ready for the end of November-ish for a competition I'm doing with our homebrew club. Then I'm also got a Sierra Nevada Pale Ale clone that I brewed up. That one's actually getting kegged and carbed as we speak. And so that one should be ready to drink by the weekend. So that'll be awesome. And then I have a cranberry ginger sour that I do every time this year because fresh cranberries are coming out right around Thanksgiving and stuff. So it's gonna be awesome to have a cranberry ginger sour on tap. So that's gonna be sweet. And that's a good one I always do at this time of year just because cranberries are available, and I like that little ginger bite at the end of the sour. I don't add very much, just enough to have it there at the back, but the sweetness of the cranberries really complements that. And then I've got a huge announcement coming up on the page, but I'm going to kind of hold off and I'm going to let everybody guess what that is. But I'll give you some more hints later on. But I'm reworking my YouTube studio, which is my garage, my brew studio, a little bit to accommodate some new let's just say a new style of brewing that I'm going to be introducing to the channel. So I did a lot of work in my studio this weekend, fixing some things up to be able to brew in a different way. Let's put it that way. So that's going to be pretty cool. Munich Helles brewed today. Awesome. That sounds good. Oh yeah, Enclave. You're on the southern hemisphere, so your holidays are in the middle of summertime to brew up pilsners, lagers, and absolutely, that's the best time to have them during the summertime. Rye mash, cinnamon, ginger, lemon peel, and a little coriander seed. Nice. That's a good mixture of stuff there. I like it. Um, I just used coriander seed for one of the first times doing this tangerine IPA video I did in the spring, and I liked regular tangerine a little bit better, but the coriander would go really well with the other stuff that you listed there. So it gives a little bit of spice to that lemon and ginger. I like it. When I was just doing it with the tangerines and I wanted more of that orangish flavor, I didn't like it quite as much, but the coriander seed would work well with those other ones just because I got a little too much spice, I think, out of those than I really wanted for the style I was going for. But for the cinnamon, ginger, and lemon peel, that would go real well. All right. So, Pilsner down. I brought a couple of different beers. Again, my kegs are like almost empty. I'm brewing like crazy right now just because I need to fill them back up. I had a beer I donated to our homebrew club for a for an event they did over the weekend, which I wasn't able to make, called North Carolina Homebrew Invitational. They do that for all the homebrew clubs. It's super fun, but I wasn't able to go, but I still donated a beer. So I really have like barely anything in my fridge right now. But I did have some more of the Sierra Nevada Oktoberfest Fest beers. So I'm going to go ahead and pour one of those guys tonight. Have a couple of those. These are so Fest beer. I think I talked about this at the last live session, but when oh, by the way, if you haven't watched the last live session, um, I kind of did a little showcase of my Europe trip where I went to Germany, Czech Republic, had Kolsch beer, went to Pilsner Urquell in Czech Republic, in Pilsen, Czech Republic, and then went to Brussels, did a chocolate beer tour, all that kind of stuff. I went over kind of a really brief, but really kind of overview of my trip there. But I'm working on a whole other video on that. So I'm working on some editing. It's going to be a little bit before that comes out, but look for that one soon. That should be hopefully the next video coming out. Maybe other than I have that one in my Sierra Nevada video coming out soon. So Fest beer is when you go to Oktoberfest, which I did in Munich. So that was one of the first 2 days when we talked about that. Fest beer is what you drink. So a lot of people think they drink like Oktoberfest or Marzens, but no, Fest beer, like this clean, crisp lager style beer, that's what they drink in Oktoberfest. Most of the tents have that kind of lighter style beer, or they mix it with lemonade half and half, and you get what they call a radler. And those are amazing. So if you go to Oktoberfest, this is the type of beer that you'll get. I've done some hazy and some ginger beer. Otherwise, I've got 5 empty kegs. I know you need to get busy, Enclave. What's going on, man? That's me too. It seems like all my kegs empty at the same time for some reason. It's really weird. Like I brew separately, but like I'll end up drinking some faster, or some go for a competition, or some do, one reason or another. It seems like all of them just like empty at the same time, and I'm like, oh crap, I got to brew back to back to back to back. So, um, for the cranberry ginger sour too, that it's coming up, I'm going to be doing a video on that one, even though I've done that before. The reason I am it though is because I'm using a different style of yeast I haven't used before. So I usually do a 2 day kind of kettle sour process, and now they have a couple of yeasts that make lactic acid as part of the fermentation process. One of those is Philly sour, and that's become really popular in the last couple of years. But the other one is called Cerevisier, and they're both made by the same company. And Cerevisier is a little more tart than than Philly sour. And I don't think Philly sour gets as tart as I would like it to be, but I also don't want it to be like Warhead sour. So it's going to be interesting. I've read some different ways of adding cerevisiae, of adding other yeast along with it, or even the next day to kind of like lessen the sourness of it. So we'll talk a little bit about that. I'm going to try that process since it's not a 2-day kettle sour. Where the kettle sour, you add the souring agent, which is Lactobacillus plantarum, and that one sours overnight over like 24 to 36 hours. But for this Cerevisiae or the Philly sour, you just add it as part of your fermentation, like you normally pitch your yeast, and then you don't have to sour overnight beforehand. You can just kind of get lactic acid out of the byproduct of the fermentation. So, kind of a cool process. I haven't used Philly sour or Cerevisiae yet. I've tasted a lot of beers with Philly sour, and to me, it tastes a little green apple-ish, so I wasn't in love with it, and I didn't think it got very sour in the couple beers that I tried. So I really want to try Cerevisiae to see if I can get it down a little bit more than what Philly sour would for their sour beer. So we're gonna try it out and see how it goes. But I'm gonna do a video on that, and then we'll taste it, and we'll see if that's the new way I'm gonna do sours from now on, or not. Maybe I still like doing the kettle sours the same way. So we'll go from there. But that's going to be something different in that video when I brew. So I haven't done that brew day yet at all. That'll be coming up in the next couple of weeks. Enclave likes Philly sour. Used it 3 times, and they say a more sour beer pitch 2 packs per batch. Tried that next. Yeah. So same kind of same concept. So you could either pitch 2 packs of that, or the Cerevisiae you would pitch, and then they say the next day pitch like USO5 or something like that in it, and then it will kind of lessen the sourness. But I kind of want to see how sour I can get it. So I'm kind of debating if I just add like a half a pack of USO5 the next day and see how that goes, because I don't mind if it's a little extra sour. Time will tell. We'll see. I mean, I might just wing it and try it, because I don't mind a good sour puckery beer once in a while, but I don't want it to be like super super sour. So we'll see. They give you some ranges of pH that it can drop to, and so we'll see what happens. But I read a bunch of stuff online, and so we'll see how well it turns out for that one. But the coolest, most exciting thing I got going on, and maybe the sour will be the first batch in this, but and I hinted a little bit at it, so I'll give you a couple more hints. Right now, ever since I've started my channel and since I've started all grain brewing, I have always done the batch sparge process with a mash tun cooler and that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of people who can't use propane or natural gas or other things because they live in apartments, or they can't use it for whatever reason. So they use electric systems. Well, I've been in touch with the company, and they are supplying me with a awesome kit with a bunch of different stuff. And so I am getting my brew space set up to be able to showcase a different brewing process for everybody. And so I'm not going to name who it is yet, but I will go ahead and announce that. It's going to be really kind of cool. So I'm working with them. They're going to be giving me some stuff, and then we're going to go through kind of a maiden voyage of a different brewing system. And so I've been talking about doing an electric style system for a long time for people who use more of a brew in a bag all in one system. And so that's what we're going to do. So it's going to be awesome, man. Yes, it is an all-in-one electric system. So it's going to be very cool. I was actually part of the upgrades I'm making in the studio is I installed a 250 volt plug for this, so I could get the larger of the systems in order to boil faster and keep mash and temperatures and all that kind of stuff. So rather than using a 110 volt plug and having it go a lot slower, I said, you know what, we're going to bite the bullet. So right in my kind of YouTube studio brew space, I'm getting it all set up for that. So I had to kind of rework some of the walls and run an outlet for that, and then pulley for pulling up a basket and all that kind of stuff. So we're working on all that stuff. That's going to be pretty cool. And I should be able to get that system in the next week or so, and hopefully start setting it up and getting after it. But I'll tell you what it's all about and stuff in a future video. But it's going to be really cool. That's some of the stuff I'd love to talk about. Enclave is like the efficiency drop or not. You know, I know a lot of friends who have similar systems, and so they actually have similar efficiencies, I guess. So we'll see what happens. Just finished your raspberry licorice sour. It was interesting. I had to buy a bag of licorice powder to try to replicate it. Need to get some citrusy hops for it. So, oh, it's a Finnish beer. Or did you say I thought you were saying you're finishing one, but it's a Finnish raspberry licorice sour. So, wow. So does it have like a black licorice taste, but like raspberries in it? Almost like a black raspberry licorice? Kind of a licorice black raspberry sour. That's kind of interesting. Does it have a raspberry color? Did you add real raspberries to that, like fresh raspberries, or did you use like a puree or anything? Interesting. That sounds really cool. I like different unique beers sometimes like that, and it gives me some ideas of doing stuff myself as well. So along with that video coming up, so we're gonna be doing one of those. I have the Europe tour video that I'm still editing. There's a lot of editing involved with that one. And then I have the brewery tour that we took specifically at Pilsner Urquell. So that was such a cool experience. Probably one of the coolest things I've ever done as a brewer is go visit that particular brewery and do that tour. It was so interesting, informative, and way beyond any other brew tour that I've taken ever. And so that was awesome. If you haven't watched my last live, I talked about it a little bit. We actually went down in the cellars and tasted the beer from the taps, right from the barrels that they make there. I mean, it was awesome. It was like the coolest thing ever. Speaking of, I have my tickets still right here from the tour. So that was really cool. This was the tickets that we had to use to get into the brewery tour. So for 16 euros or 24,606 or 369 Czech crowns, you could also get into one of those. So that's what the tickets look like. And then I bought a little sticker. But you know it's cool. I was on the tour and I bought a T-shirt at the end. But we were at this canning line place, and they were talking about all the cans and stuff, or the bottling and stuff that they do. And they had this table, and I think they put these out for people to take, but I don't think they're gonna miss one because they got thousands of them. But I actually took one of the bottle labels. Like literally, this is one of the labels they would put on the bottles, and I was like, I'm taking this. They got thousands. I mean, they put out thousands of bottles a day, so I don't think they're gonna miss one label. And they left it on the table for everybody to, it's right there by the tour. So I was like, you know what, gonna just pick me off one of these guys. So I got an actual label from one of their bottles. That's kind of cool. Um, that I lifted, if you will. So maybe I'm a rebel. And I took it, but then they also sell regular stickers, which I'm going to put on my keezer as well. But I thought that was kind of cool to have a label. So who knows? Maybe they'll come. The label police will come get me. We'll see. We'll see. So any other cool beer recipes? Everybody else brewing up this fall? Anybody doing something cool for Christmas? I'm trying to think of what I want to do for a Christmas beer this year. Last year I did that Celebration Ale from Sierra Nevada, and that was a great beer. By the way, that should be coming out like any day now on the store shelves. I didn't look today when I was at the grocery store, but I should give that a shot because definitely one of my favorite beers ever. Who gives a winning brewer subpar beer as a excuse me, subpar beer as a prize? It just met the drain. Did you get? Oh, sometimes when you go to brewery tours or brewery competitions and stuff like that, they'll give some of the leftover ones that they never cracked away to people. So when you like get something in the mail, maybe they'll send you some other beers or something like that. So I've had that happen before, and not all the beers that they get submitted are good. So peanut butter cerveza finishing soon. Peanut butter cerveza. So it's like a Mexican ale with peanut butter. That's interesting. Yeah, real ingredients, strong licorice in the background, but not overpowering. Although if you're not used to licorice, it might be weird. And very sour raspberry. I think I'm gonna do that next. Nice. I like a black licorice, by the way. Not everybody likes that flavor. I love a black licorice. It's one of the best things ever. Um, so when I don't want my wife or my son to eat all of the candy, I'll buy myself black licorice because they don't like it. And now I know I get it. So that's awesome. Very sour raspberries. That's awesome. So, and then real ingredients. You said you're using real raspberries. That's cool. Very cool. I like it. Good. Today I got up really early and I started getting out all the Halloween decorations and stuff like that because Halloween's right around the corner. So we went to town on the yard and put out all the skeletons and all that kind of stuff. So we got the whole house decked out and Halloween stuff now. And speaking of, right about this time last year, I made a pumpkin spice beer, but I didn't add any cinnamon and nutmeg in there. So check that one out if you want a good pumpkin spice recipe. That one has other spices in it that, but there's no cinnamon and nutmeg. And I got that after a different beer. Um, which I think I had on the last live and this one, but it's called Gorgeous Pumpkin Ale. And so this one doesn't use any cinnamon or nutmeg, but it has other spices, cardamom, clover, ginger, and um, allspice. And you put those in there instead, and it gives it a really good fall flavor, but not really overpowering with cinnamon. So so that's really cool. I brewed that one last year, and then I had a video too about how to serve your beer out of a pumpkin. And so I used a fake pumpkin for that one, but that's really cool. You could make like a pumpkin jockey box to serve your beer at parties and stuff. So if you want like something really cool to like brew up and then serve at either your Halloween party or at Thanksgiving, you can do that and serve it out of a pumpkin. And I used a fake one because it's kind of cool. It's like foam and it holds all the ice and stuff in there better for the jockey box. But check it out. You can see how to serve your beer out of a pumpkin. That's festive, right? Rodman, what's up, man? How are you doing today? Brewed a vanilla milk stout yesterday, so excited to see this beer, but gotta brew another beer that will finish before the vanilla stout. Sweet. What else? What's the other beer you're gonna brew? Anything cool? Um, well, before I forget about it, you can also send me any stickers, or if you want free stickers, you can send me an email at cityscapebrew@gmail.com. All the stuff that's kind of scrolling around the bottom here, check that stuff out. That's if you wanted to get a free sticker, you could email me. Hit the join button. It talks about what you can get as a channel member, right? So if you see those guys with the green labels for their names, those guys are awesome and they're channel members. They get the exclusive recipes, which I still need to put out that second one, or there's a fourth one that I'm putting on my for exclusive members, and I haven't done that yet. I apologize. I'm going to do that this week though. I'm going to make myself a note right now so I don't forget to do that. I got to release that. So you get free brew day sheets, Cityscape brew day sheets that you can use to kind of write and keep track of all of your brews. I use those still. I write down everything on paper just to kind of make myself notes, but I also use brew software too. And then you get the exclusive recipes for members only. So like there's the hazy IPA I brewed last year. Got I think two golds, silver, and something else. And that one is on there for exclusive recipes for members only. So if you want to become a channel member, you get my videos early as they drop, which I don't have any that are not published right now, but I will be having the two from my Europe trip and then these other brew days that I've already filmed. I have the two that are fermenting right now. Those will be out, and those I schedule out for everyone else every 2 weeks. But once they are on the channel, um, then you get to see them early. So I'm writing myself a little note. So get that exclusive recipe out. So you'll get another exclusive recipe for channel members this week. I was supposed to do it this last week. I apologize. I was just, life got busy, and then I did not put that out there. But I have it all written down. So we're going to post that one this week for you guys. I made myself a note to remember. So we'll get that on there. But yeah, I'm trying to do several a year for people for those exclusive recipes, because those are the ones that I don't want to really share with everybody. For all of the other videos that I do, those are going to be available like normal. But the really, really good ones, the ones that you really, really want to share with your friends and stuff, those are exclusive for channel members. So hit the join button, a couple bucks a month, helps out the channel, and you get all those extra member perks. But stickers are always free, so you can go ahead and email me. Again, it's at cityscapebrew@gmail.com. So it's not Cityscape Brewing, it's cityscapebrew@gmail.com. And then ask me for some stickers. Send me your name and your address, and I'll get those out in the mail for you. Doesn't matter if you're in the U.S. or not. I've sent them all over the world. Also, I'm ordering some new stickers. So I currently do not have any on hand. So they should be coming this week, though. I just ordered them. I got the tracking number. I think they might be coming tomorrow. So it shouldn't really be any lag. But as soon as I get them, that's when I'm going to throw those in the mail for everybody. But everyone that's asked me so far, I've already put in the mail. So if you need stickers, go ahead, send me an email. But I ordered a whole bunch more because I do like giving them out at, you know, places too, that kind of thing. They got a little QR code on them. People can scan them, go to my YouTube page, and then they can learn how to make their own beer. That's kind of cool. Mango ale prod, man. That sounds good, man. Um, I the last mango beer I did was a mango sour, and I did that one mango and pineapple together, which was really good. But mango is a good one. Hazy got a second place People's Choice in South Africa too. Well done. Nice. Is that the same recipe, Enclave? That's awesome. Very, very cool. Yeah, that's a great recipe. It's always a good one. I always like doing a good hazy, and that's one thing I'm looking forward to do with this new system too, because this new system, that they're sending me, which I'll talk more about when I get it, um, also has a whirlpool arm. And since I do a lot of whirlpool hop editions, it'll be cool to be able to do that a little bit different. It's harder to do that in the system that I do now, but this would be really cool. The things I've got to figure out, it'll be a little bit trial and error when I first get that, because how versus doing a batch sparge system, that I'm not really going to do any sparging, and so everything's gonna be all in one. And so, pH and water chemistry, it'll be a little bit different, not challenging, but a little bit different. All that stuff is available to change, but it'd just be something that I'm gonna have to just tweak a little bit, just for the new system. But I'll talk about that when I get it. So I'm really excited about trying something different. Pineapple is my enemy at brewing. Yeah, I don't add pineapple until the very, very end during um, secondary ferment. I mean, I actually transferred into a secondary vessel, and I add stuff later. But I always add frozen um, fruit. I buy it fresh sometimes, and then I freeze it, or I'll buy it frozen, so I know that there's no like organisms and stuff on it, right? So a lot of times, like my cranberries that I'm gonna do for my cranberry ginger, that one I'm going to be buying them fresh, and then I'm going to be kind of freezing them in the freezer and letting them. I dunk them under sanitizer, rinse them off water, dunk them under sanitizer once. Then I put them all in the freezer. It helps break up the skin a little bit. It also will help kill anything that's left over on the fruit itself. I do that for everything, no matter what I do. Should be a good, fun way of trying a good beer. Our mango ale took sixth place in our first competition. Very happy with it, considering we had been brewing just 1 year. Absolutely, man, that's awesome. You know what I will say? The like, it's good to just get feedback on some of that stuff. I mean, sometimes you just want to hear like, hey, what does everybody else think of my beer, other than the friends or family that come over to your house. And so these guys that are judging, a lot of times they have experience in either brewing or they're BJCP style judges. And for people who don't know what BJCP stands for, Beer Judge Certification Program. And so that one is, they may go through that whole program to actually get certified. And usually you'll have a judge that maybe is and one that maybe isn't, because you'll have two that kind of judge, and then they kind of they average your score out. So say somebody gives you like a 34 and the other guy gives you a 36, and then they say, well, your total score is 35 because it's right in the middle of those two. And so it really depends on your judges that you get and stuff. But I do like reading the feedback that they give you after they taste your beer. So it's very cool. I'm gonna finish this fest beer and I'm gonna move on to the pumpkin spice since it's October. Why not? Pumpkin ale. I only have one more of these, so I was got to finish them up before. Well, I guess fall beers could still be going into November, but I start liking some darker beers. I need to get into. Speaking of Christmas and fall beers, I got to do another porter this year, so that'll probably be the next beer that I do. Is just gonna do like a vanilla porter or something like that. I haven't done one of those in forever. Um, since last year I did. Did I do a porter last year on my channel? I can't even remember. Let me look. I can't remember now. It all blends together over the years. So we're gonna take a look here on my last videos from last year, and we'll see what happens. So I know I did a vanilla porter 2 years ago, and I just can't remember if I did last year or not. Let's see. I did my Sierra Nevada Celebration Ale one, which was the version 2 of that, which is what I nailed. I did a black IPA. That's what it was last year. So I did a black IPA last year, which is also an awesome beer. So I did not do a porter on my channel last year. I did the Haunted House Pumpkin Ale, which is the one I was just talking about, and then I did the video on drinking beer from a pumpkin, doing a pumpkin jockey box. So that's pretty cool. Check that one out. We did the maple pecan brown ale in the fall, so I haven't done a porter or a stout in like 2 years for the channel. So I'm gonna do that. I have brewed one, but just I didn't put it on the channel. So definitely making a porter. Porter, barely even know her. Porter beer. Writing that one down because that is one I gotta brew soon. Never made a porter. Never even drank one. I don't think. I'll have to make a small batch up. You know what? Porters are great. I really, really enjoy a nice dark chocolate porter um, in the fall. It's a great beer. Really cool months. I would wait till it's your cold month season up there or down there, I should say. Or how do you say it? I guess it would be southern hemisphere, so you would say down there. But yeah, I would wait definitely until it gets to cooler months. Porters I like in like November, December, so that would be your what, like June, July. Good beer, great beer. Last summer I forgot the pineapple skins inside for a day, and I didn't get rid of the fruit flies until it was winter. Made the brew too strong. Also tasted a bit edgy. Yeah, that'll probably do it. I will say some people make like a like almost like a kombucha out of pineapple skins and stuff. So that's crazy. Yeah, fruit flies are crazy on pineapples. Um, I will say, if you get fruit flies in your house, one of the things I had a whole bunch of them one time. I got one of those like Evo light things that are like blue lights, like the lights behind me, but they plug in and they have like sticky thing on the back. But I also found that if you do a little bit of apple cider vinegar in like a bowl, um, along with something else, maybe it's just apple cider vinegar. They'll go in and it's too strong for them, but they'll try to go into the apple cider vinegar and they'll die. So like you just put a little bit in like a bowl or a cup and they'll find their way to it because it's like dying fruit and they want to get in it. And then they get in the apple cider vinegar and they like die. So you're putting a little bowl of apple cider vinegar out if you get fruit flies works. I will say I have done it and they just swarm around it because they like love that smell and they're attracted to that smell. So I can't remember if I had to mix something in there with that apple cider vinegar, but that stuff works like a champ for getting rid of fruit flies anyway. Yeah, June, July, exactly. Definitely make one up. Yeah, that is a good summer beer. Now, I will say I like a porter in the summer. I just don't know if I would brew 5 gallons of it in the summer months, but I do like a good porter really any time of year. Um, if they have a good one on tap, there's a um, oatmeal porter. Maybe that's what I'll do this year. I haven't made an oatmeal porter in a while. Um, I'm trying to think of when the last one was definitely a vanilla porter that I did with the vanilla beans. So check that one out. There's one on my channel I did with vanilla beans. Um, and I've done one with toasted coconut before. So you actually toast the coconut in it. That's a really good beer. That one I think I'm on the channel. I put on the channel too. Let me look. The search porter. Yeah, so I did a vanilla porter. I guess that the only two that I got in there are that. I did a toasted coconut porter for sure. I just didn't know if I did it on the channel. That's a great beer though. What you do is you use flaked coconuts, an unsweetened version of it, and then you put them in your on like a sheet pan, and you put them on a like a really small thin layer, and then you put them in your oven and you toast excuse me, you toast the coconuts in the oven until they're like nice and golden brown on the top. But you have to keep them, you have to watch them really close because they brown really fast. So you put them in your oven for a couple minutes and stir them around, put them back in there until they're nice and toasty looking brown. And then you put them in a paint strainer bag and you put that whole thing in your secondary fermenter and you put those in there for a week. And that toastiness of the coconut flavors like pull out into the beer. Excuse me. The only thing I don't like about well, I shouldn't say the only thing I don't like. The only downside of doing that is the coconut is like a sponge, and so like it soaks up a little bit of the beer. It's not too much. I mean, you're talking like a pint. It's not that big of a deal, but it does like soak up some beer, so it does take some volume up. But in exchange, it gives you that toasty, coconutty flavor in your beer. Is awesome. If you watch every uh, Cityscape Brewing, Homebrew for Life, and Clawhammer video, you can beat most people. I reckon there's so much information. Yeah, you know what? That's the one thing. Like when I first got started homebrewing, you know, 10, 15 years ago, I had to piecemeal some stuff together, and that's part of the reason. Like I started the channel is because. And the second video I ever made, by the way, was my most watched video. Let's go see how many video views it's got now. So my most watched video is my second video I ever made that for all grain brew day step by step tutorial for beginners, and that one is got over 65,000 views on it right now, and that one is 47 minutes long, almost 48 minutes long. But I did that on purpose to kind of like everything I know about brewing, you should know in this video. If you want to get started, here's everything you need to know about homebrewing. Now, I've even learned stuff from thence because that was put out, 3 years ago. But at the same time, like that video still to this day gets, more than 100 views a day almost. And it's great because that's the one I want people to watch. That's the one I want people to like get involved, get started, that kind of stuff. And then, the other videos that I have, other, washing your yeast and trub or coming up with water additions and making a step-by-step starter, yeast starter, clarifying your beer, all that kind of stuff. That's stuff that people really want to know about. And there really wasn't a lot of videos when I got started doing some of that. There was a little bit, but not as much as there is today. And so, props to the other guys because all the YouTube guys that brew beer, we all are, kind of helping each other out and trying not to replicate one another. But at the same time, like there's a wealth of information online now, and I wish it's a good time to be a homebrewer because you can ask questions. That's why I even do the lives, so you can ask questions right here. So if you if you have questions about brewing, if you want to learn a little bit more about, your process, or you have a question, this is the place to ask it right here. Because like I always tell people, come on my lives and ask me questions. There's a guy who was just getting into. I actually ran into him at the event at Noda, and I said, join my channel, come on my lives on Sunday nights, every other Sunday, and ask questions. I mean, that's what it's all about. Like people were asking questions when we first got in here about, you know, keezers and what size cooler you would need. Well, there you go. You got a whole bunch of people right here to ask and live, so you can actually like talk to the person who you're watching videos from. And so why not ask away? I will share. I will spill the beans. So absolutely do that. Missed what you're drinking now. Yeah, I'm drinking that pumpkin spice, gorgeous pumpkin ale. That's what I'm drinking right now. The In this glass. So this one is a pumpkin ale. It looks darker than it is. It's more of like an amberish color, but it's the lights down the other side, so it is kind of clear. You can almost see my fingers through there. It almost looks like a porter and stuff on the screen, but it's more of a really dark amber color beer. This is kind of a color that I'm going for which is kind of. I wish I could show you. Here, let's see if it works. If I put my flash on my camera up behind it. So if I do this, you can probably see the color a little better. Maybe, sort of. Yeah. So it's like a darker amber color beer, and that's kind of the maybe a little bit darker than this, but this is the color I'm kind of going for my Schwartz beer that I just made, which is a dark lager. So that one is going to be really good. We put some cocoa nibs in that one even, so that should be really cool. So very, very fun. I can't wait. So that one, we're gonna do a tasting video in like a couple of weeks. So that one's a lager, so it's got some time yet before I'm gonna taste that one. But my Sierra Nevada should be ready by this weekend. So hopefully the video for that one will be either out next week, or maybe that'll be the next weekend, depending on how much editing I get done on my Europe brew tour ones. So what's everybody drinking right now? Anybody's got a really cool beer other than brewing? There, you guys got stuff. Everybody always keeps other beers on tap, or other beers in their fridge. So anything cool that you have that you want to actually share that you're drinking? Because I drink, I mean, the two beers I just had are commercial beers. So anyone have anything cool that they're trying out that they want to share that they think is awesome? Because I like trying different beers too, and so. Also, if you have any questions or something, shoot them in the chat, and we're happy to answer them. I'm just looking up a couple of different recipes for some porters and stuff that I wanted to do, and maybe we'll bounce them off and see what you guys want to do for that as well, because it's all about what you guys want to do on the channel more than me. So if I think like, hey, I like this kind of thing in a porter or this kind of thing in a porter, maybe you guys would have a preference, and then you guys can pick. But I might do the toasted coconut one if I didn't put that on an actual video. So that's pretty cool. I might do that. Um, the one year I did that, I did it. Well, I've done it twice now. I think I did a different beer that was had toasted coconut, and then it had peanut butter powder, PB Fit powder in it as well. So I think I did that one too. Actually, I might that one. I swear to God, I did it on the channel. Let me look. Maybe I didn't. Huh. Weird. Maybe we did toasted coconut in a different one that I'm thinking of, and maybe I just did it and it wasn't the porter one that I'm thinking of. Because I swear I did the. Oh, you know what it was? We did the toasted coconut in the. We did some toasted coconut in the brown ale I did, so maybe that's what I'm thinking of. But I did toast a coconut in a porter too, which is way better in a porter than in a brown ale. So definitely got to do that. I don't know if I'll put the peanut butter in there. Chocolate and coconut goes together. It's like a Mounds bar. Peanut butter, then it's just too much complexity. There's too much like taste going on. Like I want it to be like either one thing or the other. If you want to do peanut butter, cool. If you want to do like peanut butter and chocolate, fine. Peanut butter and coconut, or excuse me, coconut and chocolate, okay. But like all three kind of is a lot. It's a lot of different flavors going on. Like I want it to still taste like a porter with just like hints of something else. Like that's the best beers that have like it's a beer base, like that's a really good porter base, but then it has a little hint of something else. So I think I'm gonna do a porter for sure or a stout. I haven't done a stout on the page in a while either. So those are both ones that like I need to go out of my wheelhouse and do that one a little bit too because I used to do porters all the time and apparently I haven't done one on the channel in 2 years. So who knew? So with dark and rye beers, I add a teaspoon of tomato puree for a yeast and nutrient for 30 liters. Really? Tomato puree? I haven't even heard of that before for a yeast nutrient. That's awesome. So that must have like some characteristics and stuff like that that yeast love in there, and it's good for the yeast. I'm not sure. I buy yeast nutrient and I add it to every one of my beers at the end of the boil, but never heard of adding tomato puree. That's crazy. Where did you learn about that? The morning I woke up dead. Drinking our Mexican lime lager. Ooh, I love a good Mexican lager. How did your Mexican lime lager turn out? That sounds delicious. Adam, welcome, man. You got the stickers. That's awesome. You're welcome. You've been hesitant to buy some liquid yeast since it needs to be shipped, and it's also more expensive than dry yeast. But I want to try and elevate some brews. Thanks for the stickers. Absolutely. Again, if you want some stickers, scroll on the bottom of the screen here. Look it up when it comes across the screen. Cityscapebrew@gmail.com. Send me your name and address. I'll send you some stickers. Like Adam got some in the mail. That's awesome. You can also become a channel member. Hit that join button and get exclusive recipes, brew day sheets, the whole works. All that stuff is helps out the channel a lot. Adam, buy liquid yeast, man. You're missing out. Or if you don't, I don't know if you live in an area that has a local homebrew supply store. You can also do that. But I know it's more expensive. And if I always had to ship it, I would probably opt to go with some of the drier yeast too, because it just is. It's going to be less expensive to do that. However, you're getting into winter months in the United States now, so you can probably ship without having to really worry about it soon. So in the November, December, January range, you don't probably have to worry about it being super cold forever. Liquid yeast can be room temperature-ish. You just don't want it to be like super hot sitting in the mailbox at like 80, 90 degrees. But if it gets to be like 60s, that's fine, right? Even if it's sitting out for like 24 hours, it's totally fine to be at 60 degrees. Then put it back in the refrigerator when you get it, or start brewing with it, or make a starter if you need to. But there are so many. I'm fortunate enough to be close to a homebrew supply store where I've gotten a bunch of really good liquid yeast. Omega makes a bunch of really good ones. White Labs has the best hazy IPA yeast there is in London Fog, which is what it is. And Omega also has a hazy IPA yeast called Tropical IPA. I just got one of those to try because I haven't done that before either. They have some really good West Coast IPA or pale ale, West Coast yeast, I should say, in general. It's not just for IPAs, but it could be for pale ales. I think that's very similar to West Coast Ale 1 and West Coast Ale 2 from Omega. 2 is the less diacetyl-ish flavors of West Coast Ale 1. And so West Coast Ale 2 is probably the closest kind of, I would say, Chico yeast I think there is to Sierra Nevada's yeast. And so try liquid yeast. I know it's expensive. I get it. See if you can take a trip up and buy a bunch of liquid yeast when you go out of town or something like that at a homebrew store if you can get to one. I know I'm fortunate enough. I've lived closer to some my entire life, brewing life anyway. But liquid yeast is where it's at if you can get it. I would definitely recommend doing that. But there are really, really good dry yeast, and a lot of dry yeast companies now are changing some of their liquid yeast to dry yeast even. So there's more variety than there used to be in dry yeast, which is really good. But I have been using a lot of like 3470 soft lager, even for ales, like cold IPA video I just did. A bunch of the other pilsners and stuff like that that I've done. The Vienna lager, I mean, I've done a bunch of them. 3470 yeast is a champ, so you can't go wrong. That's dry yeast, and I love it. Verdant yeast also, if you're looking for a good hazy dry yeast, Verdant yeast from Lallemand is really good. That one is a great beer yeast for hazy IPAs. Only dry yeast here too in Florida. Yeah, I get it, man. I get it. But I love the variety that they have at Omega and Imperial and that kind of stuff for some of their liquid yeast. So if you can get it, or if you make a road trip, pick them up. I got two liquid yeast from White Labs. One is a Pilsner and one's for a Kolsch. The only other ones I've tried was when I brewed with your hazy IPAs. Yeah, there you go, man. Awesome. Yeah, Pilsner yeast too. Those are ones that you can do with dry yeast. So if you do get some and you ever get some in the mail, Pilsners you can do with 3470 easy. That's what I did. That's a dry yeast. Kolsch yeast, they have a Kolsch yeast that was really good. I can't remember which one that was. I'd have to remember that. I don't know if it was dry or liquid. I probably was liquid if I had to remember, but I did a starter for that one. I know that. Either way, that's pretty good. The but they're coming out with more varieties of the dry yeast, so that's good. Mexican lime lager is pretty good. Took first place brewer's choice in our second competition. That's awesome. Very cool, man. Is that for a homebrew club or in like a BJCP competition? Yeah, Verdant yeast is awesome. Verdant yeast is a champ when it comes to hazies. I do like it. I did win a couple of medals with Verdant yeast. I think London Fog from White Labs is probably the best hazy IPA yeast there is. I mean, that one and Y Yeast makes London Ale 3 um, or 1318. That's what it is. Y Yeast makes a London Ale 1318. And that one's was always the favorite for a long time, but I really, really like White Labs London Fog. It's really good. So for dry yeast, I do not usually make a starter. For wet, you can make it. So some people, it's misconception that you can't make a starter with dry yeast. You can make a starter with any yeast, and in some cases, it's better to do that. With dry yeast, most of the time you have more active cells in more active. You have billions of cells. Wet yeast has gotten better over the last, I would even say 5 years. White Labs used to do these little tiny vials, and they'd always say, "Oh, make a starter if you're over like 1040." Well, every beer is over like 1040, so you'd always have to make a starter with them. Now they have these bigger packets, not only for White Labs but Omega, Imperial, White Labs. Everybody's doing it where they're more expensive, but you don't need to make a starter. Now, I will say I almost always make a starter for a lager yeast, except for 3470 and some other dry yeasts. But I have made starters even with the really big packets of Omegas, just because I like what. So I always say to people when you're when it's like going out for a run, right? And you want to just like go warm up, and you're going to run around the block before a race. And so you're kind of, you know what you're going to do. You're not going to pull a hammy because now you ran around the block one time, and all of a sudden you're like, you know what you're going to do. You're going to run your race. You're not going to just start from scratch. You've warmed up. You've stretched. You've gotten ready for your race. That's kind of what a starter does, even if it has enough cells to rep or doesn't need to be replicated a bunch of times. Now you always get more cells when you make a starter, but you also kind of teach the yeast like, hey, I know what I'm doing. I'm going in the race warm, right? And so uh, making a starter is never a bad idea. I should say that first and foremost. But sometimes I don't, just because of time and not wanting to do it for some dry yeast. So a lot of times for dry yeast, I will just kind of sprinkle it on the top, let it do its thing. Because there's more viable cells generally, if it's not super old, in a dry yeast packet than there is in wet yeast. So to each their own. It's always a good practice to do in general, anyway. So I've worked as a city planner for my entire career, but I worked up in Minnesota around the Minneapolis, St. Paul area for a long time, and now I'm down around the Charlotte area. And so I've worked in several different municipalities. I've worked for 6 different cities over my career, and that's why Cityscape Brewing is part of my name, my brewing name, because it applies to kind of city terms that I use for my day-to-day job. But yeah, that's where that comes from. So I don't always like share my like the names of my beers on my channel all the time. You'll see them like written on my whiteboard or something like that in between there. But sometimes I'll come out with like a Pilsner or something like that, and I'll name it something else, like, Plaza Pilsner, or the Village, the Villager Vienna Lager or something like that. It'll be like city planning terms that I use for my beers, just because it's what I do for my day-to-day job. Meant to do a starter a minute ago, but realized I just dropped the yeast already because it's distracted with you guys. Yeah. So, starters are good to do. I always, so when I make a starter too, I always use those little yeast starter, condensed starters, condensed worts that I've made. So if you've watched that video of me making those like condensed worts, those are little canned proper starters, if you will. Those are DIY versions, and they are awesome. They are super easy. You make one, in a pressure cooker, and you make like 10 or 15 of them at a time. And then all of a sudden, like, it takes 5 minutes to throw together a starter, because you just take your flask, sanitize it, throw in the starter stuff, throw in enough liquid to get to 1 liter, pitch in your yeast, and you're done in like 5 minutes. So you don't have to make a boil up a starter, cool it down, all that kind of stuff. Then pitch your yeast, wait a while for it to get started. It's really, really fast. So watch the canning condensed wort DIY video that I did a little while back. So that one was that's a great video. I even did a live stream when I made one time. That was really easy. And you can make like 10, 15 of them at a time. The cool part is too is that they last for like 40 years shelf life. So you don't have to do them very often at all. I do them like once a year, if that, and I make like 15, and that's good enough, because I don't make them but every couple of years, because I don't make a starter every time I brew either. And then in a pinch, also what I do is, I shouldn't say in a pinch, every time I make a starter, when the starter gets completed, I put it in the refrigerator and I let it decay. I let it separate. So all that yeast is just caked onto the bottom of the Eldermeyer flask. And then I pour off all that spent beer. I know a lot of people will make a starter and they dump the entire starter in their beer. And you can do that. However, all that crap on the top of the starter is just crappy beer. So don't pour it in your beer if you don't have to. Like, decant off, meaning pour off the their spent beer on the top, and leave just enough liquid to like stir up and rouse up the yeast off the bottom of the Eldermeyer flask. You're gonna save yourself from pouring in like a bunch of nasty beer in your beer, and then you're just gonna get mostly yeast to that's what you're pouring into your fermenter to help your beer get started. It doesn't hurt to pour the whole thing in there necessarily, but I think there's some chance of getting some, you're pouring nasty beer into good beer. So why would you want to do that? And so I always put it in the refrigerator, let it crash down, and get that like good yeast cake on the bottom, and pour off all that old spent beer from the starter when I do it. So would one bottle starter wort? Yeah, so that's what I'm talking about, Enclave. There's a way of canning, which is basically bottling your starter wort, and so I did a video on that. One thing, you don't want to keep it for a long time if you're not canning it, because it can get botulism from not heating up properly and storing it long term. So I talk about that in my video. What you basically do is you take a condensed version of the wort, and you boil them in the jars already in a pressure canner, and then it will seal all the jars up. And again, they're good for like 4 years. BJCP competition, awesome, even better for you. Took it taking first place, proud man. That's awesome. Welcome, Robert. Welcome, welcome. Just wanted to say I built the jockey box from your other video. Worked great. Thanks for the instructions. Absolutely, man. That's cool. Good for you. That's awesome. I just actually used our jockey box this last weekend. Well, I shouldn't say I used it because I didn't go to the event, but I did help them set it up. But that thing works out. We use it. We use it 2 or 3 times a year for our club. Building that jockey box was awesome. Now I can do up to 10 taps at a time, and it works out awesome because I have two four tap jockey boxes and then one 2 tap jockey box. And so the one I built in there, I used this last weekend even. So yeah, if you haven't done that, it's a way to serve your beer cold at get-togethers, parties, events, that kind of stuff. So you can do up to from 1 tap all the way up to as many as you want, as big as your cooler is. So go check out the video, man. That's cool that you did that, Robert. That's awesome. Thanks for letting me know. Yeah, watch the canning video. So I think that canning video is called like DIY proper starters or DIY canning or something. I can't remember what it's all. I could probably find out in a minute. But oh, here it was. It's called Canning Condensed Wort DIY Proper Starters from January of 2023. So I plan on using a few taps for the Keyser when not in use. Absolutely. So reuse the taps if you don't. I mean, tap handles are the most expensive part of that. I've gotten some like just donated. I had a few extra when I switched over from my regular kind of standard tap handles to the forward sealing ones that I have now. And so I just kind of reused a couple. We got a couple donated. You can always get them on like Craigslist and stuff for really cheap, but you don't need a real expensive ones for a jockey box if you're not going to use them very often. But I make stronger beers, but not worried about botulism. The botulism though forms in it's like a that forms in the canned wort, so you don't want to do that. It's really rare, but you'll get it in the canned wort, and then you can't kill it even with like 150 degrees. You have to like boil it higher than boiling temperatures to kill that type of. That's why you have to pressure can. So yeah, the botulism is not something to mess around with. I wouldn't. That's why I do the pressure canning thing. But I talk a little bit about that in that video, and that's why you want to pay attention. But give me 1 second, you guys. I'm going to run out real quick, grab a different beer that I have in the fridge, and then I will be right back in just a second. So give me just like 5 seconds. I'll be right back. But leave any questions and comments and stuff in the comment section, and I'll get to that in just a moment. All right, had to grab myself a raspberry sour from the other room. Or excuse me, that's blackberry sour. I had this one sitting out there and I forgot to grab one when I came in here, but I have it on tap. So I just went and poured myself one. Nice, good raspberry sour. We were talking about sours a little bit ago. Or not raspberry. I keep saying raspberry. It's blackberry sour. So from blackberries over the summer, it was awesome. So I have a little bit this left in the keg. This is one I'm trying to finish out for I can do that cranberry ginger. So as I was thinking about it, I'm like, I should go grab one of those. Yeah, it's gone longer than 5 seconds. Took a little longer. I also used the little boys' room. So of course, here we are. So yeah, double duty, two birds, one stone. Grabbed a beer and got rid of some old beer at the same time. So yeah, so this fall I've been really busy. It's fall's always busy. We got sports going on and other things going on. My son plays football, so he's got football games. We got a ton of different activities. We did the Europe trip. I'm going back to Minnesota to visit some family in a few weeks. We got plans already around Thanksgiving, so it's like go, and I'm fitting in all these different brew days, which I already have two done. I have two on the schedule already, and then I have this system coming in, which is really going to be awesome. New brew system for those who are just kind of joining. I'm talking a little bit about that. I'm not going to tell you exactly who is providing yet, but we'll get to that. But I talked to a supplier of an electric brew system. They're sending me a bunch of cool stuff in the mail. We're going to be hooking that up and trying out an electric all all in one system, which is different than where I brew now. So for those who follow my channel are that are watching me and they're like, I can't do propane or natural gas or that kind of thing because I live in an apartment, or maybe I use a different system than you do, so it's a little bit different than how you brew. Well, that's going to change here shortly because I've been working with a company and they're going to be supplying me with a system, which is really awesome. And we're going to be brewing up some different beers with an all-in-one brew in a bag style system. So I'm making some changes to my brew studio in order to accommodate that. So it's going to be really cool to kind of showcase that in the next couple of weeks. We're going to be doing a couple of test batches on there. I don't know if I'm going to do the maiden voyage test batch as a video or if I'm just going to do it myself. I kind of want to do it as a video. Like, this is the first time using it. You're going to walk through it. If we make mistakes, we make mistakes, right? We'll see. So I think I might do it as a video just because it might be entertaining at any point during the brew process if I mess something up. So we'll see. But I'll probably just kind of do a test run like with water in it and just see how that works first. See if I can get, the temperature stuff down right and pumps and all that kind of stuff because I just don't have that stuff right now. So that's going to be really cool. But we have a bunch of cool different things in the works. So stay tuned because this is going to be a really awesome next couple of months to get things really off the ground. It's going to be sweet. But by the way, this blackberry sour is freaking banging, really good. And I was talking about doing that sour video too. If those who are just jumping on, we're gonna do that in a different way too. Because I always did kettle sours, which they take 24 to 36 hours to sour. We're gonna be doing a different type of yeast called Cerevisiae, and I'm gonna be seeing how that works. I know it gets really sour, which I like. Not super warhead sour, so we're gonna see if I can tame it down a little bit with some regular yeast too. We'll I'm going to report back after that one gets brewed. I haven't even brewed that one yet, so that one's on the docket. But I have two beers that are in the fermenters, ready to go. My Sierra Nevada Pale Ale clone is going in the keg and getting carved up this week. It's actually been conditioning for like a week longer than I wanted it to, which sometimes doesn't hurt. And then I have a Schwartz beer, which is a dark lager, like an amberish, almost like a dark amber lager. That one will be coming out soon. So, or excuse me, that one will be finishing up fermentation soon, and then it's going to be in its lagering phase. So that's going to be cool. So we've got a lot of stuff coming on the channel here shortly. And then obviously the two videos that I'm doing about my Europe trip is still in editing phase. So that takes a little while to edit all that stuff out, but we're getting there. So slowly but surely, got a lot of stuff going on the channel. Also, again, if you want brew stickers, go ahead and email me, cityscapebrew@gmail.com. The stuff will start scrolling across the bottom of the screen here shortly, and you'll see that that one has the information on how to email me. Again, cityscapebrew@gmail, and then you'll get my send me your name and address, and I'll send your stickers in the mail. So that's an easy way to do it. So check out the scrolling as it gets going. You'll see my email address there. Write it down. You get some stickers in the mail. It's anything like my first batch, it was a complete chaos. Yeah, absolutely. Like I kind of know what I'm doing a little bit. I've helped out on similar systems than the one I'm receiving, and so I know that I can. I know that I can do it. It's just a matter of working out the kinks with like a water test run first. But I think I might do like my first brew day with uh, a buddy of mine who has a similar system, and he can help talk through some of that stuff too. So maybe I'll have him involved with the part of that video as well. But it'd be kind of cool to show any errors because people get these things and they want to know what they're doing right or wrong and that kind of thing. And so maybe they could watch it and learn something from something I did that I thought I was doing right and I wasn't or something like that. So that's what the channel is all about, is teaching people. And I don't want people to think like I'm going to be perfect at it the first time, because I'm probably not, right? And so we'll make mistakes along the way and show all that stuff. So I'm leaning towards my first maiden voyage brew day just being on a video and wing it, right? Problem, my Omega yeast packets stating pitching at 50 to 55 Fahrenheit. If my yeast starter on a stir plate from room temperature mode is at 50, do you chill the yeast before pitching or leave it at room temp? So starters are always at room temp. It doesn't matter. So that's not going to create any like off flavors and stuff. And that's why I always kind of decant off the beer anyway, because it doesn't really matter. But no, you don't need to chill the temperature of the yeast down. But I will say, I pitch my yeast a little bit early anyway. So if you're, I always do like I always do about 55 degrees for lager yeast. So it says 50 to 55 for optimum temperature. What I would do is put that right in the middle and do like 53 degrees. And then I would pull out your yeast when you're ready to use it. I would decant off the liquid like I was talking about, stir it up, and let it sit on the counter for a few minutes to get up to closer to room temperature. I would pitch it in, even if it's a little bit warmer. What you don't want to do is pitch it when the yeast is really cold and the wort is really hot and like shock it. But it's not going to be shocked if it's sitting at like 50, 60 degrees from sitting on your counter for a little while and warming up. And, every once in a while you walk past it, stir it up a little bit with your hand, shake it up. But if you're, I mean, I sometimes pitch, so I don't always get down to 50, 55 with just a chiller. So I always have to let my like fermentation chamber chill it down a little bit anyway. So a lot of times, even for lager yeast, I'll pitch that yeast at like 60 something, like 63 degrees anyway, and just let it cool the rest of the way as it's sitting in there. Because it doesn't take all that long. And so, but I'll pitch it in the 60s just to let the yeast get in there and kind of warm up and get, do their thing for a little bit. And that's not going to hurt at all. Same with like liquid or dry yeast. I'll kind of pitch it on there even as a little bit warmer to kind of like help it hydrate, get in there and, start doing its thing. And so I wouldn't worry about your yeast starter being at the exact same temperature as your beer as you're pitching it, especially in the 50s. I would actually let it warm up a little bit more, get that yeast active, and then pitch it in there. As long as it's not, 20 degrees, 30 degrees difference in temperature, it's not going to shock it where it's going to like kill the yeast or anything like that. Any good advice for the raspberry sour? I think I'm going to maybe use the Lavlan's champagne dry yeast. If you're trying to sour the beer, I would use a souring fermenting yeast like Philly sour or cerevisier. Now, I wouldn't use cerevisier first if you've never used it. I'm going to do a video on that just because I know kind of what I'm doing with it. But I would use Philly sour if you're trying to go for a sour beer. Like this beer is specifically sour on purpose, right? And so if you want to do a sour, I would either watch one of my kettle sour videos on how to do a kettle sour like that. But if you're just looking for a tartness in that beer, I would use a yeast called Philly sour. Champagne yeast isn't going to be quite as good for beer. And so I wouldn't use that. If you wanted something that is a cleaner ale yeast, I would go with that, but I wouldn't use a champagne yeast on beer. You may get some off flavors you're not really wanting to use. So the Lavlan champagne yeast, dry yeast that you're talking about, that one is for wine. And so I wouldn't use that necessarily for a sour. You can, but it's not as good. Ciders, you could probably get away with that. But I would definitely use a dry ale yeast or Philly sour yeast for a raspberry sour. You'll be very surprised and pleasantly surprised if you're going for a sour beer to use Philly sour. Because you won't get as much tart flavor as you think by just adding the raspberries. Because the beer will not make that. It'll give it more of a fruit flavor rather than the tart flavor you're looking for. What's up, Northwest? Cheers, man. Yeah, electric systems are good for keeping temperature control for sours, for kettle sours. But if you use the Good Belly Lactobacillus planetarium, like I was using in my kettle sours, it's not as necessary to keep it warm. So you don't have to do that. I stop cooling down after 100 degrees, but you don't have to keep it at 100 degrees. You can let it get into 90s, 80s. It's fine overnight. But electric systems, you can keep them warmer. You're right. If so, that does help that process along faster if you can keep it warmer. Yeah, so I think the Philly sour is from Lullamon, and I think that is a European yeast. I'm not 100% sure of that though, so don't quote me on that. But you might be able to. If you can't, I would still use some type of ale yeast rather than a wine or champagne yeast for beer. If you're doing a traditional beer, I would use a traditional beer yeast. For ciders, for apple ciders and stuff like that, hard ciders, you can get away with a champagne yeast because it's you're fermenting fruit just like like a wine. But for beer, it's a little bit different, and so I would use a yeast that's better for beer brewing specifically. But yes, it is about what you can get, in your area. So if you can't, will it ferment? Yes. I just don't know if it's going to give any weird off flavors or esters or something like that because it's stressed out in those environments rather than a champagne or some other type of wine. That's all I'm saying. And it might turn out great. Who knows, right? But I've never done that, and I've never heard of anyone doing that. So I probably wouldn't chance it, or else you're gonna maybe be unhappy with your results. All right, guys. So the just a recap too for people who are just jumping on and didn't see it earlier. My last video that I did was on that cold IPA, and I entered that into a competition with Noda Brewing for beer and branding, and that's a competition where they kind of pair you up with a branding professional. And last year, 2 years ago, like two competitions ago, we did one that had to use maple syrup in the beer. I did a maple pecan brown ale with my buddy Adam, and we brewed up a maple, like I said, maple pecan brown ale. We got People's Choice, so we got this awesome, sweet tap handle trophy, People's Choice for that one. And that one was because all the people that came in for the event tasted them and they voted at the end of the day and they picked ours as the winner. And then this last Thursday, two Thursdays ago, I was in that same competition. We had to use Chinook hops this time. I brewed by myself this time. It had a different branding people that we were paired with. We named the beer Hopsicle Cold IPA, brewed up with all Chinook hops, two-row, and flaked rice. And then we used 3470 yeast at ale temperatures, and that's why the cold IPA, right? And then I ended up getting 2024 beer winner. So this one I'm actually going to be brewing at Noda Brewing in the spring. So that's a sweet, awesome. So it looks like the same tap handle, just has a little bit difference of a name and stuff on it. But I could not have been more thrilled to have won that this year. Very, very cool. There was probably, I think, 40 something beers there to try and different branding things, and it was awesome. It was so cool. So that one is really neat. I'm gonna get to brew that at Noda, which is like the third largest brewery in the Charlotte area. They're huge, and it'll be really fun to have that on there in tap. I think they'll even have it like 6 packs or 4 packs and stuff at their tap room. So that's gonna be really awesome to get to brew at the location. So really, really neat. Really looking forward to doing that in the future. They are a really good brewery. I have a lot of respect for Chad Henderson, their head brewer. He's a really cool dude. And he always comes and contributes at our homebrew clubs, and also is he lets you pick his brain. If you want to talk beer, he loves talking about beer, and so he's not afraid to share all of his secrets. I think it's really cool. Really down to earth dude. So I'm super happy about that and ready to brew some beer at their brewery next spring. So again, this is kind of a lighter citrusy beer, so we're going to brew this in the spring. So hopefully at that time it's something people want on their at their tap room. So it'll be very, very cool. So check that video out if you haven't already. That got released last Monday, so about a week ago. Shows the whole process. Even the branding people came and like talked about the branding part, which was really, really cool. But yeah, drinking up a blackberry sour there. We had some fest beer. We had some pumpkin beers. I had a Pilsner too before, and I again apologize for getting a late start for those who were with me right at the beginning. My computer, I go on like 5 minutes beforehand, which is what normally I do. I have everything all set up so it's ready to go like a day or two in advance. And so I go to like get set up and I can't see my webcams or anything. And I'm like, what's going on? So I had to go restart my computer. Well, when I restarted it, did all these updates. And I'm not kidding you, it took 25 minutes to do all the updates. It was so slow, but I probably, probably putting it off for a while. I needed to do that. So it was, we got on better late than never, or better late than never. And, I can't believe there were like 6, 7 people just sitting there waiting for me still after 25 minutes of me not being on. I apologize again for being so late, but you guys rock, man. That's what it's all about. If you have questions about some brewing too, leave them in the chat section here too. That's what I like to talk about. People's issues, problems, things that they have going on in their brew system, and they just want to ask a question or two. That's what this whole live is all about, man. Ask some questions in the chat if you have them, and happy to answer them, and let the chat also answer them. If I don't know, I'll be honest and say I have no idea. Like he was talking about the other champagne yeast, I have no idea. I've never used it before, but it might be fine in the beer. And if other people have seen that and they want to chime in, go ahead. But yeah, the day today was just, it got away from me today because we were not only because of the update thing that just happened, but I was out doing Halloween decorations all day, getting skeletons and spider webs and stuff all over my yard and stuff set up because we could do our neighborhood's like huge into Halloween, so we got to do it. I got the lights out and the strobe lights going, and there's like decals in the windows. Looks like people are like pressed up against the glass in some of the rooms. It's pretty cool. So our neighborhood goes all out for Halloween, so we always got to put stuff out and get ready for the kids. So I will say every year that it gets to be like a weekend, and you always get those like older kids that shouldn't really be trick or treating anymore. I always do something every year to scare the crap out of those kids. So I one year I did I carved a pumpkin big enough to like put over my head, and I had like a whole overalls, and I dressed up like a scarecrow, and I had like hay sticking out of my hands and stuff like that. So I was like stuffed sitting on a chair next to the candy bowl. and people would come up, and I wouldn't always do it to the first person, but I would scare the crap out of those kids. It's so funny. It's always the kids that are like upper middle school to like low high schools that probably shouldn't even be really trick or treating anymore, but they're going out late. Oh man, I would get those kids like nobody's business. If it was like a little tiny kid, I would not scare them at all. I would just like let them grab some candy out of the bowl. But I would when it came to like kids that are well aware of what Halloween is and how scary it can be, oh, I would just get them every time. It was awesome. I use champagne yeast for literally every single ferment, but I've never tried it in beer. I make mead, cider, and kombucha, hard seltzer, champagne yeast. Yes, so I have used champagne yeast for those type of. I've never used it in a beer. That's what my point was. So yes, I've used champagne yeast in ciders and definitely in seltzers because it's best in seltzers. But those are environments I would imagine that are similar to wine, and I don't know that it's different, and you maybe can, but there's probably a reason why people don't generally use those for ales, but I would use a clean ale yeast first before I used a champagne yeast. Yeah, if it's high ABV, I mean you can try it. You can always try it and see how it turns out. I mean, it may not be bad at all. And you might find it that you really like it and you keep doing it. And maybe if it turns out awesome, let us know because maybe I'll try it. I've never thought about that. I've even heard of people using bread yeast in like for making bread in beer. Well, I don't know that I would like go that far because yeast is not always the same. I mean, even with ale yeast and beer yeast, there's so many varieties that, and they all taste different. But I've heard of people literally using bread yeast to make beer. So it can be done, and maybe it'll be great. Who knows? I have no idea, but I don't know that I would do it if I had a choice of using a different yeast. But if it's something you can't get somewhere else, it's not going to hurt. It's just going to be you might just get some different like phenols or off. I wouldn't say off flavors even. You're going to get some different esters from those type of yeasts. And some of them are pleasant esters. So there's some yeast that give off like really pleasant, like floral, fruity esters when they're stressed or in a different environment. And like Kveik, for instance, likes it really, really hot. And the hotter you get it, the more some of those fruity esters come out. And so you almost kind of wanna on purpose stress that yeast out. In other yeast that would be terrible because they give off terrible flavors if they're stressed. And even USO5, which is like a regular ale yeast, a clean ale yeast, if it's fermenting it in like the 70s or 80s, it can give off some really funky flavors. So yeah, to each their own. Awesome guys. Well, I'll tell you what. Um, I'm gonna finish up this last beer. Any other last minute questions? Go ahead and put them in the chat here. I know I got off to a really late start, but I apologize everybody sticking with me today. Um, the things I got coming up. Again, always send me a email if you want stickers. I know I say this a lot. I'm going to get some new stickers just probably coming in the mail tomorrow, I think, or hopefully. So I have all those. I have anyone who's ever asked for stickers has gotten those in the mail already, but I'm getting some new ones. They're the same as the other ones, so they're not anything different. But if you haven't gotten stickers before, go ahead and email me cityscapebrew@gmail. You'll see that on the scrolling below here. I also have that Sierra Nevada Pale Ale video that's going to be coming out. That should be ready to drink this weekend, so I can film doing that and then put that out soon. I have the Cold IPA video. If you haven't watched that already, on that came out last week. Go watch that. I have a Schwartz beer, which is a dark lager that's in the fermenter right now. That's gonna be awesome. That's coming out in a couple of weeks. It's got to go through that lagering phase still, so it's just getting done with fermentation. So we got that going on. I'm doing a cranberry ginger sour, and that might be my maiden voyage for the new system that I'm brewing up with in my brew studio. So we'll see. But I got to brew that one yet. But I'm going to use a different yeast for that one. So stay tuned to learn a little bit more about that. And then of course I've got those two videos that I've been talking about and that I did on my last live on my whole Europe trip. If you haven't watched that last live, it's a really cool. I do a big recap of some of that I'm going to be doing 2 videos specifically on the Pilsner Urquell tour that I did in the Czech Republic in Pilsen, which is awesome. And then, excuse me, the other one is going to be a tour in general about all the cool places we visited on kind of our beer tour through Europe tour. So we did Oktoberfest in Munich. We did Weizenstephan and the oldest brewery in the world that was opened in 1040 AD. Then I did we did the Czech Pilsner, of course, in Pilsen, but we also had a bunch of really good Pils beers in Germany. We went to Cologne where we were Kolsch's. We had Trappist beers in Belgium. We had a bunch of different really awesome beers in a beer and chocolate tour. I talk about all that stuff. I'm going to talk about it in the upcoming video, but I did it in my live as well and shared some pictures. But all that stuff is going to be on some upcoming videos. So I've got a lot of stuff coming up in the next few weeks. But I tell you what, I appreciate all you guys always jumping on with me on these live streams. That's what it's all about. It's really, really cool to have building a community where people really kind of want to know stuff that's going on and is able to ask questions. So, Bearded B, any recommendations for propane burner? Planning on going for all grain soon. I'm getting the kettle that you have from Amazon and still debating on a brew in a bag or making a cooler mash tun. So there's great questions. So yes, I had the Hurricane. There's a burner that I used that I actually would recommend you getting, whether you're doing propane or natural gas. There is a video that I did, and it has to do with changing over to natural gas. And I think I want to try to there's a video, search my page. So Beer to Be. There's a video on my page called Why I Switched from Propane to Natural Gas. But it doesn't matter. If you don't have a way to switch from natural gas, that's totally fine. But in that video, in the link, I have a burner that I use. It's called the Hurricane 60,000 BTU burner. And you can buy it both in natural gas or you can buy it. And actually, here's the deal. I'm going to do it. I think there's a propane version. So if you're going to do propane, I'm going to put a link for you to the exact one that I have. I'm going to put it in the chat for you. Hold on. So right here, this one is let me know if that link works. I just found the video and I did it. So this one is for that same Hurricane 60,000 BTU burner. It's an awesome burner. It's got a huge plate and it's a bunch of little tiny burners, and it boils water faster than any other burner I've ever had. Now, in a pinch, you can do whatever you want, but that's a great one. You can also change, if you ever go to natural gas, you can change the orifice out and convert it to natural gas, which is what I use for my other thing. So if you do a brew in a bag, you want to buy a bigger kettle, right? So, or bigger kettle. If you don't, then you'll want to use so if you're getting the kettle you said that I have from my Amazon, which is great, it's the gas one that comes with the whole deal. If you buy a 10-gallon version of that, you're not going to be able to do a brew in a bag for a much larger than, or because you need the volume space for all of your grains plus all of your volume of water. So if you're going to do that, sometimes you'll want like a 20-gallon kettle. And that's a big kettle, right? And so if you don't want to go that route and you don't want to brew in a bag system, then the cooler mash tun it is cheap to do that route also, but you'll want to upsize your kettle if you're going to do brew in a bag, and then buy a brew in a bag sack to go in there. But what I would do is, especially if you're just getting started in all grain, is do kind of what I did in my videos and use a cooler mash tun. And so I have a whole video on how to make one of those too. That's probably the cheapest version of how to do it. And then you can always switch to a brew in a bag once you want to keep doing the process. But get absolutely 100% the batch sparge process that I use for the Rubbermaid mash tun cooler is probably the most simple and cheapest way of doing it right away. The hardest thing to do with brewing a bag in a kettle system with propane is keeping your mash temperature consistent. And so the reason I'm advocating for the Rubbermaid cooler and the mash tun that way is because that helps keep that mash at a specific temperature for an hour. It's hard to do that on a burner. And so I know a lot of people will have it and they'll be like, "Oh, I need to turn it up a little bit because it's dropping temperature or something like that." Unless you have like an insulated kettle, which some of the all-in-one electric systems do, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the future because that's something that I'm going to be talking about with some of the things that I'm getting in the mail. But for the regular kettle, depending on what time of year it is, if it's outside and it's cold and that kind of stuff, it's going to be really hard to keep your mash temperature. You're really going to want to use that Rubbermaid cooler. So I'm stressing that because I think that's the best route for you to go right now. And so great questions altogether. So burner wise, the Hurricane 6,000 BTU burner, 60,000 BTU burner is the best way to go. So follow that link. And as far as a mash tun, when you're first getting started, Rubbermaid containers are the best way to go, only because they're easiest to keep your mash at this consistent temperature. Now, if you get an all-in-one system that's electric or something, that's different. And we're going to talk about that because I'm going to be showcasing a couple of different systems that do that kind of stuff in the future. Specifically, I'm getting one set up in my brew studio right now to kind of talk about those who can't use propane or natural gas. So you're absolutely welcome. And send me beer to be after this. Send some comments on my videos, and I'll respond to them, or email me even if you have questions. Cityscapebrew@gmail, and I'll answer any further questions you have if you have questions about some of the stuff that you're buying through there. We're, like I said, in a pinch. That's the stuff that I would go with right away if you're trying to jump to the all grain route. And I'm telling you right now, that's the best thing you're going to be able to do. Going to all grain is the best way to brew beer, period. So if you have questions along the way, that's what this channel is all about, man. Shoot me an email or hit me up. Found Philly Sour. Awesome. Yep. It's Lullamons. Yep. €10 for 11 grams. There you go, man. That's what it's all about. That's Philly Sours. They also make that same. Lullamond also makes Cervisier, which is a souring one. So Philly Sour will make it tart. So this is like this raspberry sour I have right here. This is a very, very tart beer. And if you're looking for the sour beers, that's the way to go. If you really want to keep it like a beer flavor, then you're not going to want to use Philly Sour. You'll use a regular clean ale yeast. But Philly Sour is the way to go. Yeah, it all depends on where you go. All depends on where you go. It depends on the places. So most dry yeast aren't all that bad. Philly Sour and Cervisier might be a little more expensive just because of the fermenting capabilities, but that's but the I think I don't know. I'm trying to think of like I probably pay 10 to 12 euro prices in US dollars anyways, a little more for liquid yeast. Dry yeast is probably around $6 to $8, maybe depends on the yeast, um, maybe $5 to $8 or something like that for dry yeast. But those Philly Sour or Cervisier might be a little more just because those are the lactic acid fermenting yeast, and so I don't know if they charge a little more for them. All right, guys. With that, I'm gonna probably wrap her up. We're going on a couple of hours here, and it is an early day for me this week. I'm going to be doing a lot of video editing this week because I want to get some videos out for you guys. But I appreciate everybody who's jumped on the live stream tonight. We had a really good conversation about different questions, and that's what it's all about. So I appreciate all of you guys jumping on and keeping me company. And for those who stuck around at the end during my troubles along with getting started because my computer was restarting like 900 times and updating. Thank you very much for being patient with me as we got started tonight. So thank you guys, and cheers. If you have any questions, again, leave them in the comments. I'm always following up even after the live video. So leave questions, comments in the video description below. Cheers and happy brewing, guys. Cheers.